An older married couple sits at their kitchen table, debating whether to loan money to their son. A young family scrapes together change from a ceramic piggy bank to cover the week's groceries. In Frederick Foote's story Rain, this quiet domestic friction is suddenly interrupted. The windows explode inward, overwhelmed by an apocalyptic 40-day flood that traps the couple inside their own home. In another story, a man named Cool tries to escape a relentless California heatwave by taking a small boat down to the riverbank for a quiet morning of fishing. His exhaustion is broken when an ancient woman materializes on the shore, demanding he track down her missing sister. Foote does not place his magic in distant medieval kingdoms. He drops it directly onto the kitchen tables and fishing docks of the working class. Foote spent his career as a teacher. He retired and then, in 2014, went back to community college to study writing. Over the next decade, he published 26 distinct stories with the Freedom Fiction Journal, a body of work that spanned from contemporary horror to biting satire. His characters are almost exclusively Black Americans living on the margins of society. They are people navigating the daily friction of underpaid labor, neglected neighborhoods, and the heavy presence of state authority. Documenting these hardships through realism often leaves the characters feeling like passive victims of overwhelming systems. To give these struggles their proper scale, Foote breaks reality entirely. When the weight of historical trauma and economic collapse becomes too immense for standard fiction, he introduces the supernatural. The natural environment in these stories is frequently shown in a state of decay, choked by industrial exhaust and chemical runoff. For centuries of folklore, vampires have been portrayed as apex predators, hunting humanity from the shadows. In Foote's story, You Know How We Are, he flips that dynamic. A vampire corners the narrator to explain that her species is dying, and human beings are the ones killing them. Human blood is so contaminated with synthetic chemicals and microplastics, it acts as a lethal poison. As these jagged pollutants accumulate, they short-circuit ancient supernatural brains. A species that survived millennia faces extinction simply by feeding on us. He repeats this theme in the story She, following a sentient mosquito-like creature that is slowly starving to death because it cannot locate a single unpolluted human host. Humanity's toxic footprint has grown so large that even the darkest predators of myth cannot survive contact with it. When institutions fail to protect vulnerable communities, the resulting vacuum exposes neighborhoods to violence and decay. In A Perfect Match, that failure takes the form of unchecked street gangs who terrorize the locals and drive young children out of the public parks. Without police protection, an ancient witch named Nambi steps into the void, operating through the unassuming disguise of Little Bit. She issues a violent ultimatum to reclaimed neighborhood, executing her justice by magically skinning the gang leader alive. But this agency carries severe risks. In A Dying View, a frail outcast receives immense power. He massacres the local gangs, but his human hubris leads him to cross the goddess, resulting in a curse of eternal, agonizing immortality. Foote grants marginalized people magical agency when abandoned, acknowledging the corrupting cost of supernatural vigilantism. The Deep South's historical weight is the backdrop for I'm Back, where the legacy of Jim Crow segregation remains palpable in the heavy, humid air. Foote treats the region's history of bigotry as an active, physical threat. The racism is personified as Seth, an ancient, literal demonic entity that inflicts active misery on the local population. The protagonist's introduction to this force is brutal. He is violently blinded by the demonic presence the moment he arrives in Mississippi. This blinding serves as an initiation. He's drafted as the new guardian of the Maroon, hidden magical sanctuaries protecting Black life. He must tap into ancestral resilience to actively fight back against the shadow of prejudice. Systemic racism operates as a literal monster in Foote's universe, and defeating it requires the awakened magic of Black heritage. Foote builds these modern fables to reflect reality, which means he refuses to offer neat, comfortable resolutions. In The Visitor, a mysterious entity arrives in a deeply prejudiced town, healing the physical ailments of oppressed women and leaving them empowered. But this miraculous intervention does not lead to peace. The disruption of the social order triggers sweeping, chaotic riots across the state. Similarly, the starving creature in She finds no salvation. The narrative ends with her flying north simply to warn neighboring colonies of their inevitable starvation. Defeating one monster or finding one moment of magic in a story does not fix a broken society. In his own words, Foote designs his fiction to elicit a mixture of anger, despair, hopefulness, and reflection. By casting ordinary laborers and outcasts as the subjects of dark mythology, Frederick Foote uses the supernatural to amplify the ongoing, unresolved struggles of those living on the margins.